and greetings from CDSS. And we thank you each one for joining our web chat this evening to continue the conversations of working together to prepare for the reentry. We were thrilled to see that there were over 300 organizers from across the country that registered for this web chat. So we're very grateful to each one of you for being part of this amazing network of support. I'm Linda Henry, the CDSS Community Resources Manager, and helping this web chat happen are other staff members, Sarah Pilzer, our Operations Manager, Nikki Perez, our Membership Coordinator, and Katie German, our Executive Director. So we'll start off with some tech tips from Sarah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our web chat. If most folks at this point have been on a Zoom call before, but if this is still new to you, first of all, we ask that you keep your mic muted and video off while we're in this big room together in the beginning. Once you are in your breakout rooms, of course, you can turn your video and microphones on, and we'll have some time at the end to all chat together. You can find controls for turning on your video and microphone. If you're using the desktop version, they'll be on the bottom of your screen. If you're on mobile, they'll be in the top right corner. And you can switch back and forth between speaker and gallery view using on desktop the upper right corner and on mobile off to the left there, as you can see on our slide. If we are in speaker view and sharing our screen like we are right now, you can drag, there's a bar between the slides and the video that you can drag back and forth to change the proportions there. So hopefully that's enough to get you all started. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll try to get them answered there. Back to you, Linda.
Okay. Bear in mind that this web chat is being recorded, so you'll be able to see the video plus the PowerPoint and the chat bar transcription on the CDSS website by early next week. So now I'll turn it over to Katie and she'll give you a glimpse on the overview of what's in store.
Great, thanks, Linda. So here's our plan for tonight. I'm going to give a little bit of what I call the sector perspective. So just kind of an overview of what we're learning and how we're synthesizing and thinking through what might come next for the larger dance community, dance music and song community. Based on feedback from previous web chats, we are building in a little bit more time and more emphasis on breakout rooms. So after I'm done gabbing, we will randomly sort people into breakout rooms, and we'll provide you with a few prompts, questions to ask. And we think those breakout rooms will be about 7 to 8 people. So hopefully everybody will have enough time to go around and give input and get to know each other a bit. After that, we'll all come back together for some Q&A, which has traditionally been from you to us, but there might be some questions from us to you, and we might even play around with the chat function a bit at that point. So that's the basic plan. And I think we're ready to just launch right in. Actually, we're already ahead of schedule. That is just how good the Country Dance and Song Society is. All right. So yes, I'm Katie German. I'm the Executive Director of CDSS and have been for the past 3 years. I live and work, even before the pandemic, live and work remotely from Asheville, North Carolina. So we are pleased that everybody is catching up with the way that we've been working the last couple of years. I'm kidding. I know it's been hard. You have to, just have humor sometimes when you're dealing with the hard stuff. So it's so great to see everybody from across the country. Thank you. Texas, California, Connecticut. Wonderful. All right, Nikki, I think we're ready for the first slide. So we had a web chat in August, yes, about the pandemic and what this means for our dance community. So this is just a quick glimpse on where we are in the pandemic. As I think we all know, it varies a bit by region, but overall cases are going up again And we are entering cold season where more activities will be inside in ventilation systems. So I think we need to be prepared for the cases to keep going up. But unlike the beginning of the pandemic, hospitals are much better prepared and stocked up. They're able to manage the volume better, and we are learning better all the time how to treat the disease. So we are better off than we were at the beginning. There are vaccines in development, and they are likely to come out next year, but we're pretty sure high-risk populations are going to be prioritized. So they won't be massively available right off the bat. It may be a full year before they become broadly available. There's a wide variety of opinions on that. And I started plugging in sources and just had too many slide sources, but that's not what this is about. And I think you all are probably obsessively reading about all this, just like I am on a regular basis. We also know that rapid testing is in the mix. Researchers are still working on accuracy and dependability or reliability on those, and cost and supply are both factors, so they're not really options right now. And then there's the consideration of herd immunity. The truth is that we're still learning about this disease. For example, transmission seems to be in clusters rather than at a steady rate. And we are still trying to understand how prior infection impacts future infection and transmission. So herd immunity would be nice to get to, but we're still trying to figure out if that's achievable and what that means for this disease. So that's just a recap of kind of where we are. And from my perspective, I am not an epidemiologist, I am not a fortune teller, but given all of the information that we have available to us right now, we are at best about halfway through this. And I think a lot of people know that, but sometimes it's helpful to just go ahead and say it because it helps you mentally prepare for the next steps. All right, next slide, Nikki. But I also want to talk today a little bit about what history might be able to tell us. So one of the biggest questions, or one of the people are asking a lot of, asking CDS a lot these days, how long is it going to last? When will it be safe to come back? What should we plan for? What about the last influenza? So let's talk about that just a little bit. So there was the Great Spanish Influenza that hit 1918, 1919. And there are some interesting things that came after that. But I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that the Great Influenza also happened right after a world war and right after the Volstead Act, which was the beginning of prohibition and a huge politically divisive scenario in the country. So it's not enough to say that just because we have a pandemic, we have the same situation that they had back then. I will say, though, we've got some pretty heavy political divisiveness going on right now. And we have a lot of, just like nativism was on the rise back then, right now we have confronting systemic racism and racial unrest in the country. There are some parallels to make. We are experiencing trauma beyond just what a pandemic brings to us. So I think it is worth looking at kind of what happened after that. So after the influenza had worked its way through the population, then we had the Roaring 20s. And the Roaring 20s, as you know, brought the Jazz Age, proliferation of American literature, not definitely supported by the Harlem Renaissance, and a rise in new art movements, right? So just this hotbed of getting out there, excitement, collaboration, inspiration, and new things. And I think you see that a bit in what happened in social dance in the 1920s as well. So before the pandemic, the social dance scene was really definitely for the predominantly white community, was ragtime. And ragtime dancing was pretty complex sequence of steps strung together and really focused on frame and performance and show. And what you saw after in the 20s, in the rise of the Jazz Age, was a lot of those norms shifting, where the basic fundamental of the foxtrot or the waltz or even the tango is more simple and easily accessible with components that you build on over and over again. But there's a shift from things you had to learn and be schooled on and work at for a long time before you could do it well, to more simple, accessible ways of dancing together. The modern dances of that time brought people physically closer together with their partner and interacting with the whole dance hall. Even if there aren't grand right and lefts or, you know, contra lines, there's a lot more close proximity to all the people your partner dancing with and the people around you. And at the same time, individual social dancing crossed into mainstream right culture. So that's really borrowing. With the jazz music came a lot of influence in dance traditions from the African American and Native American communities, and starting to look at independent movements in chorus with others as a way of social dancing. Great. That's not exactly what we do, but some of the takeaways in reading through this and thinking through that is, so we're moving from more difficult dance traditions to traditions that made it easier for beginners to join in and to build on over time. It was more focused on the connection with your partner and the joy that you feel in the community around you, interaction with the other people around you. Those are interesting things to think about in our context. Next slide, please. So, but here's a reality check before we go any further. None of that happened overnight. It took years and years and years to develop. We look back at the 20s as one little chunk or a whole cohesive chunk. But the truth is, there was a lot of development into that era and through that era. And people made it happen. It didn't just happen. There were a lot of drivers, facilitators, organizers, inspirers that were making all of that happen. And those people aren't in our history books. And I think it's easy to forget that anything like this, big art movements, changes in social dance and art and literature, they're people driven, they're human experience driven. So those are 2 points I want to make before moving on. So are we finally going to start talking about us? Yes, let's start talking about us. Next slide. All right. So again, I am not a fortune teller or an epidemiologist, but because I get asked this a lot and because I've been thinking about this and obsessing about this so much, I am starting to see our pathway forward in a 4-phase approach. I don't know if this is how it's going to go, but man, there's a lot that we could do if it goes this way. We have a lot of opportunity to really ignite a fire and passion in new dancers when they come to us. So the 4 phases that I think of as the social distance phase. The next phase would be a local phase. 3rd phase would be a regional phase. 4th, the new normal. And we are right now smack dab in the social distance phase. It's easier to talk about where we are and what's coming next. The more I move forward, there's going to be, I feel less confident about what the new normal is going to be, but I'm hopeful. All right, next slide. So in the social distance phase, obviously everything is online, online, online. These are the things I think organizers could, if organizers are in a position to do this work now, it could make a huge difference in the unfolding of the reopening of our dance communities. Community culture work is often some of the work that comes up or has in the past come up for organizers when something goes wrong, when there's a problem. And it's often done when you're in the midst of trying to solve that problem or help people navigate a conflict, which is a very difficult time and to do really deep, meaningful, and important culture work. So I have said it many times and I'll keep saying it. This is an incredible opportunity where we are not managing conflicts on the dance floor, where we could step back and create time as organizers to do this work. So to me, community building work includes a lot of things, but one, I think for me, the most important place to start would be core values. Getting together as an organizing group or beyond, involving your community is good too. And talking about what are the most important things for us? What is it that makes us tick? What is it that keeps us coming back? What is it that's so important that we create for others? And that is a brilliant way to open up the door to any number of pathways from there. We have a wonderful, right now, a very wonderful culture and safety task group that is a board community member task group. And they've been doing a lot of work on a toolkit that will be a multi-part toolkit. We were hoping to get it up to show tonight, but our webmaster has been very ill, and so we weren't able to get it together. So we will send a follow-up. When we send the follow-up survey or follow-up information, we will be talking about this a lot more in the weeks to come. But what they have done is provided some really great examples of, actually, Diane Silver, you're on this call somewhere. Do you want 5 minutes to talk about the culture and safety work that the task group has done? But no more than 5 minutes, because we got to keep moving on and we don't have it to show.
Absolutely. I can probably do it in less than 5.
Hi, Diane. Thank you.
The culture. You're welcome. Should I just dive in?
Go for it. We're all community here.
Okay. The culture and safety task group, the community culture and safety task group, is recommending to local organizers what we are calling a safety structure. The idea is that as a local group, if you were to develop these 5 pieces that taken together, they would do a lot to prepare you for providing a safe dance environment kind of across the board. And safe is a very broad umbrella. There are many elements of safety. And so we think about it in terms of physical safety as well as emotional safety. And the structure, the 5 parts are that first, it would be developing a statement of community values. So that's what Katie has just been talking about, that it's a big process of having community listening sessions and getting down on paper, brainstorming from anybody who wants to participate, you know, what it is that you value, and then honing those ideas into, you know, a manageable and succinct statement that really states what it is you care about. But if you do that work, then those values drive the rest of your safety structure. The other components are, the next 3 work in tandem to provide emotional safety. So they are a code of conduct, and then courtesy and etiquette guidelines, and then a complaint procedure, complaint and response policies and procedures. So the idea is that the code of conduct are absolutes that you set that are based on your values, that basically say you must do this and you must not do that. And if you break these, you will be asked not to return. So it's, you know, the extremes of what you expect from participants, you know, harassment, assault, vandalism, you know, things like that. The courtesy and etiquette guidelines are much more deep and a bit more difficult, but they are all the nuances. They are the behavioral expectations that you recommend to people, that you urge people to do, that you encourage people to do. And, you know, but people aren't going to be banned right away if they break them. And the way that you develop them is, you know, through a long process of leadership by example and being very intentional in the way you nurture the culture of your group, that you have these norms that you have developed very intentionally, and you emphasize them and you talk about them and you have them in writing and you demonstrate them, so that as new people join you and they kind of suss out, you know, what's the culture of this group, they discover and you know, adopt your norms of, we hope, things like kindness and inclusion and respect and stuff like that. And then, and all of that is for preventing problems. So if you do a good job at those things, then hopefully you have minimal problems. And then the third piece is that when problems do arise, you want to have a really good process for addressing complaints, for encouraging people to report when things go wrong, and having a clear and efficient process for addressing the complaint in a timely and positive way. So those are the first four pieces: values, code of conduct, courtesy and etiquette guidelines, and complaints. And then the fifth piece is the physical venue, and that's physical safety, which is much more like a checklist of things to be aware of, like trip hazards and the decibel level in your hall, so you're not making people deaf by coming contra dancing every week. And do we want to allow glass containers or not? Your first aid procedures, your emergency procedures. What do we do if somebody has a heart attack? All those kinds of things. So those are the 5 pieces of the safety structure. And for each piece, the task group is working on creating kind of a writing template for local groups to use. We are asking for examples from across the country, from groups that have already created each, you know, any of these pieces. We collect those examples, we sift through them, and we pull out what we consider to be the best of the best. And then we synthesize it all into a single kind of template, so that local organizers don't have to do the work of scouring the internet looking for examples and sifting through hundreds of examples. We're trying to make it kind of a one-stop shop tool to help you then tailor and write the documents for yourself in the way that is best for your community.
Great. That's absolutely right. Good job. Woohoo. Months and months and months and months of hard work condensed into just minutes. It's amazing. Thank you, Diane. So yeah, we're not going to dive in on to that extent on everything, but we're really excited about this coming, and we know a lot of people are ready and waiting for it. There is so much knowledge in our community right now that I think you know, we are all going to make each other stronger as we work together. And so this is really, the work of the safety task group is really focused on that. Okay, so moving right along with the slides, back to community culture. The next thing I have listed here is preparing for excellent volunteer coordination. So to me, that means just writing some job descriptions, thinking about what it takes to make events run, making sure things are covered, looking for opportunities to shrink the ask, because volunteers are so much more likely to say yes to something that's clear, and there are clear parameters. They know exactly what's expected of them, and it's a limited ask. And so a lot of times people are writing notes or jotting down or sending emails right and left to try to coordinate all that. But wouldn't it be fantastic right now to just mark out some time to say, okay, these are the jobs that we need to fill. These are the job descriptions. They are ready to go, easy peasy, clear as a bell, with information on who that person contacts. Again, that's not groundbreaking work, but this is an excellent time to think about that as an organizing team. It helps distribute the labor. It helps make managing that a lot easier. And it makes it easier for people to say yes when they know what they're saying yes to. Great. The other thing that really right now is a good time to think about is fundraising. And I know a lot of you, especially in our affiliate survey, said that fundraising was one of the major concerns you have right now. We are thinking about more discussions and resources for fundraising, and we're working on that. So right now, a lot of orgs are doing okay. CDSS financially is doing okay this year because we have an incredibly generous community that cares so much about not just how we're doing now, but investing in the future and making sure that we are all come back together. So I know a lot of other organizations are feeling that, but there are a lot in our group that are really didn't have a nest egg or reserves to tap into, and are really struggling. So that's something that we are going to continue focusing on in the near future. So when I say fundraising, we can think about fundraising for the freelancers or the gigging artists that have lost income. A lot of folks have done that already. And we also, we'll see at the end, there's a place in CDSS where some artists have listed how to support them. And we've tried to make that an easy connection. But also for your dance organizations. And so there are, again, we have a wide variety of organizations that do campaigns already. This is old news. This is not new to them. But for those of you that have never done a fundraising campaign, this is a really good time to consider it, or considering doing another one, or a larger version of what you've done in the past. It can be as simple as a letter from your organizer team or your president to people whose addresses you have. Sometimes it's just a matter of talking to 6 or 7 people saying, do you have contact addresses for people? And is there a way I can ask, invite them to engage with us? There's also social media campaigns. The end of the year, Americans are very generous at the very end of the year. So if you start planning now for an end of the year, either letter campaign or a social media campaign or an ask, it usually takes, sometimes all you have to do is ask. And a lot of times the fear is, what if people don't respond? Well, then you know what the worst case scenario is. People don't respond, but you will be overwhelmed. You will be floored by the fact that people do respond because they care very much about being able to dance again. So one approach is, you could say, basically, we're preparing for the future, and we need to prepare for some low income times in our future, which we're about to talk about. It would be really helpful right now for your support would make a huge difference right now in our ability to bring this back as soon as it's safe to come back. So we can talk more about that later. All right. Preparing for the next phase. So the next phase is local, what I call the local phase. And here's what I think we need to do now to make that successful. We need to go ahead and start planning for beginners, focusing on beginners. That means beginner appropriate programming and pathways to skill building. We need to encourage all local musicians, including people who don't consider themselves formal musicians or ready to play for a dance. Now is the time to really pump some support and influence and communication in their direction. Create opportunities for them to connect and build their repertoire. There are lots of, Act Mad in Michigan is about to put out a series of musicianship workshops. There are a number of other organizations that are also doing this as well. And so we're hoping to try to get as much of that onto the CDSS calendar. But organizers right now, anyone you know that has touched an instrument or played an instrument in your group, check in with them and see what they're willing to do, because you might actually really need some open band support in the next phase. So if you already have a strong open band going, kudos to you. And if you missed our web chat on facilitating open bands, you can go to the web chat section on our webpage to catch that web chat. We also recommend that you plan now for future marketing. So that means, just thinking, you will need a critical mass of people regardless of their skill level. And there will be people looking, and they will need help finding you. So start thinking, again, we're moving into the local phase next. Start thinking about the local publications. Where do people go locally to find out about events? Listing in local arts councils, common boards, newsletters. Just a little bit of digging around as an organizer group and asking the people you know will reveal pathways that need to be explored. Finally, engaging your community about adjusting expectations and being a part of rebuilding. I think this is going to be a really big job for organizers, and one of the most important things that organizers can be doing early on. That can be individual conversations with friends and coworkers, but we all need to start preparing now for the fact that what am I saying? I'm saying, I think we're going back to a beautiful and exciting place, but it's going to take time to get there, and it's going to take all of us working together to get there. So we need to make sure we are not expecting all of this to happen immediately, and that people aren't totally defeated or disappointed when the first dance they come back to is not the same experience that we've been remembering or missing. All right, next slide. So at some point, and no, I'm sorry, I do not know when this will happen. We will all have to keep watching the pandemic and the news. But at some point, we will be ready to start going back to smaller, accessible local events. So at that point, organizers really need to be preparing practically, mentally, and financially for smaller crowds. This is where the fundraising right now can really be important, because if you are paying for your venue and you count on the take at the door, the ticket price at the door to cover that cost, you may be looking at running more dances than you're used to at a deficit. And it's necessary. I hope that we will be able to figure out a way to run deficit dances during this phase, because it'll be critically important to start building that sense of community early and having a place for people to recongregate or to come if they're looking for social art. We need to expect fewer experienced dancers on the floor. So a lot of our experienced dancers are experienced because of years of dancing, and some of those years of dancing have added years to their life, right? So we need to really know that, again, it's not going to be like the peak experiences we're remembering. We need to be ready to meet beginners where they are. And that means planning for really beginner accessible programs and being ready to just set the tone of, we're here for fun, for connection to people, to the music, and it doesn't have to be great right off the bat. So we also need to be focusing on community building, prioritizing, whoops, I said run over complexity. That should say fun. You can run if you want, but that doesn't sound fun to me. Potlucks with safety precautions. Anytime you share a meal or eat the food you brought near each other, that creates creates a little bit of opportunity to build community. At the Jonesboro dance, it's always ice cream sandwiches, and man, that's a big deal now after years of ice cream sandwiches. Or Klondike bars. Sorry, Jonesboro folks, if you're here. Also, social media connections to the new folks. So you need to be ready to say, hey, do you have fun? Do you want to keep in the know about when we do these again? This is how you do it. This is how you stay connected. Let me get your email, or here's the Facebook page. People already do that, but I want to make sure it's really heavily emphasized on this phase when beginners are coming in. And we want to make sure we're keeping up connection and online or distant engagement with the people who aren't ready or able to come back yet. So we don't want the people who are still not able to come back to feel like the train is leaving without them. Because when they're ready to come back and they come back, that's going to be a big energy boost and skill boost to your community. So that's important to remember. All right. So when we're in the local phase, we need to prepare for the regional phase. And what we can do then is reach out to other arts organizations to find out how they're doing and start exploring some joint events. So if they are in a situation where they're losing money for events and you're losing money for events, are there opportunities to collaborate and do joint events to bring communities together, to cross-pollinate, and to cut expenses? We want to create a regional marketing plan. So we had previously created a local marketing plan. I didn't put it here, but we needed to do local marketing during this phase. And then we start looking at our regional marketing plan. And that could be either you as an independent organization, just casting a wider net, or collaborating with the other organizers in your region, very much like some regions are already doing now. All right, I'm going to keep moving ahead. Oh, I do see that there's a lot of chat going on. I will say that I can't keep up with that and talk at the same time. but I think it's okay. I actually am dying to read it, but making myself not read it. Just know that I'm not going to respond right this second. Okay, third phase, a regional phase. So I call it the regional phase just because I think this is when some regional travel starts resuming. So I'm thinking like as a dancer, I start local with my local community. As it seems to get safer or things, treatments or vaccines or testing becomes more accessible, I will be ready to be like, okay, well, maybe I'll pop over to, maybe I'll go up to Berea. Maybe I'll go down to Charlotte. Start broadening a little bit more, which is great because that means more people can come to the individual events. So at that point, we would recommend that organizers collaborate to set up mini tours for regional freelancers. This is a practice that is already happening. But if you aren't already talking to other dance organizations, if you're a contra group, other contra organizations in your region, within a state or a couple state cluster, this is a great time to start reaching out so that when we get to the regional phase, we can start, okay, we're at a point where we're bringing in enough money in the door, we can cover the rent for the facilities, and we can start paying a little bit extra for travel for regional talent, for the callers and musicians. You want to make sure that you are still very intentionally incorporating skill building in all of your programming. So that's conversations with your callers, that's making sure it's just becomes a part of the norm, because in this phase, you will have more experienced dancers coming back. It's a perfect time for beginners. Hopefully they will come back and they can start building their skill and feeling like there is a pathway for them, and the learning is intertwined with the dancing. We would like to see a lot continued nurturing of community. So that's continued work on community values, continued work on just talking about who we are, what's important for the community, and creating time for community to be together. We also recommend collaboration to co-host events with other organizations. Again, with an interest and energy rising and events growing bigger, that's a great time to create some bridges for cross-pollination. If someone is interested in salsa dancing, they may also be interested in contra dancing. If someone is interested in blues dancing, they may also be interested in, well, contra dancing. Sorry, there are more examples, but you get the idea. Create opportunities for communities to experience new kinds of dancing together, because I think it will boost both communities. And market, regionally and collaboratively. I think this Help Me Market was not a big ask on the last affiliate survey, but I think it's coming. So it's on my radar, it's on our radar to start talking about what that means and try to help make that a little bit easier. So great. All right. At this point, preparation for the next phase, this is where I'm going to stop predicting, because honestly, I'm not sure what's going to be growing out of all this. I can't wait to see what grows out of all of this. But I can't predict what the next best thing to do is. But at some point, we will be getting back to a point where people are feeling comfortable traveling all across, far and wide. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm seeing a lot of, I'm sorry, ECD folks. I did not mean to not represent you. ECD has lots of potential for crossover as well. Great. So I think that is my spiel. Let me see the next slide, Nikki, to see if yep, that's great. Okay. So this is me, because I have this opportunity and platform, just downloading all these thoughts that are going through my head and all the conversations that we're having at CDSS, and thinking through what could possibly come next and how we can possibly work together and prepare for it. So that being said, and remembering that most of the inspiration and fabulous ideas come from you in the community, we want to create time for you together. So we're going to split into breakout rooms. There'll be probably 7 or 8 people, I think. Sarah's going to, it will be a random assignment. So if you're here as a team, you might not be with the other team members. That's probably good because then you have more to talk about afterwards. Once you're in the breakout room, turn on your mic, turn on your camera if you'd like. Here are the prompts that I'm suggesting. You are welcome to just completely ignore me and talk about whatever you want. But if you feel so inspired, here's what I would suggest. Everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves and say where you're from. What do you, as an individual, see as the biggest challenge for your community moving forward? And certainly taking into consideration what I've just been talking about. Finally, what do you think your next steps as an organizer will be? Okay. All right. I think that's it. So Sarah, any final instruction, or are you just going to wave your magic wand?
One moment, please. And then we'll get started. We'll have about 25 minutes in the breakout rooms. I'll give you a 5-minute warning, and then there will also be a 60-second countdown at the end. So in just a moment, I will open them and we'll be good to go. All right, here we go.
All right. Well, there are still a lot of us, so we might still have to use those mute buttons, but okay, welcome back. I hope that your feeling is you need more time with each other rather than that was really torturously long. We have some time now to ask some questions, some of the things maybe you asked earlier in the chat when I was not reading the chat. I do want to ask you to put the questions in the chat bar just because there are so many of us. So as we've done in the past, if you have a question that came up either in your discussion or that you have on your mind, put it in the chat bar. Sarah Pilzer, how would you feel being the question coordinator? Are you okay with that?
Sure, we can do that.
We'll do our best. We won't get to every single question, and I might throw in a question back to everybody else in this process. So I think that would be good. Actually, I want to start with that. I'm going to start with that. So before we answer any questions, I want to ask the whole group a question, and please use the chat box to type your answers. So here is the thing. In one word, after these discussions and this talk tonight, how are you feeling? One word, go. Fine. My husband always says fine. Yeah. It's like an inventory of my own emotions.
Is there any chance you could read a few out loud versus staying silent for those on call?
Absolutely. Seen, encouraged, depressed, overwhelmed, uncertain, motivated, energized, a lot of energized, floundering, more motivated, overwhelmed, pessimistic, hesitant, okay, fine, apprehensive, curious. I may not have, there were lots of duplicated things that I may not have accurately represented in my readout just then. Yes. So I hope as you all read through that, you are, your overwhelming feeling is, we are not alone. We are all feeling all of these things. And great. Charles Wallner, I'm not sure what Z means, if you want to explain that later to me. Okay, so let's have some questions from you all. And if you entered them above this string, you might want to enter them down again below.
I grabbed some earlier, so.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sarah.
One that seems to be on multiple people's minds is how to get local organizers interested during COVID times when most aren't doing anything right now. How do you keep your organizers motivated to work during the quote unquote recess?
Oh, I think that's a question for the community, if not more than me. Any answers to that one? If anyone wants to, Gay Pfeiffer, our esteemed president, has an answer to that.
I think what excited me in our breakout room was just thinking about how we can collaborate. So communities that don't feel like they have many resources can work with other communities in their region. Maybe take turns doing something or share the responsibility and figure out how to use all their energy together rather than each one of them having to duplicate everything.
It's a great idea.
A follow-up question to that may be some work that you could be doing during the recess. Will CDSS be sending out templates for organizers to work on core values, etc.?
We were just discussing this. Yes, I think we'd like to. And there are different approaches, but one thing we certainly could do is talk through our process. We went through this process as an organization with our board in 2019 when we created our, or 2018 when we created our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And that was my favorite part of that whole board meeting, was the core values work and discussions. So we were talking about sharing how we did that and putting that together as a package.
Great.
So yes.
Let's see. What is the best way for small communities like mine to search for, find other Zoom seminars and learning videos to pass out to the community?
Oh, great question. Well, a place that I'm obviously going to start with our calendar. So the CDSS does have an online calendar for online events that are happening all over the country. It's a great place to start. It's certainly not comprehensive, and it is as strong as the input that goes into it. So we have it is designed for people to add things. So as much as you go to it, I hope that everyone's also reminding friends and colleagues who are putting things together to list things on the CDSS calendar. That's for engagement, music, dance, and song events. Any other suggestions from the community on that one? And you might have to just unmute and talk, or let's see.
I have my name's Seth Tepfer in Atlanta. I have a listserv that's sort of grown organically. That's partially taken from CDSS and partially from dances that I know of. It's announcement only. I send it out Mondays and Fridays for the upcoming next 4 or 5 days of all the virtual events, dance events that I know of. And so if people are interested in that, you can put your email in private chat to me, or I'll put my email out and you can just email me and I can add you to that listserv. We've got probably 120 people on that list.
I see that. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Louise Siddons recommended that the events calendar be more upfront on the CDSS homepage, and I agree with that. I just wanted to, I love that events calendar, but sometimes, you know, I have to remember, oh, under community, oh, events. And a few times, you know, because life gets busy and your brain gets rattled. Yeah, it'd be great if it was just more upfront.
Absolutely. And we've heard that a lot. We've right now on the homepage, if you open the homepage on the right side, there's a maroon rectangle that says online events calendar. So it's a click right from the homepage now. It wasn't always there, but certainly.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I did see that someone said they had to navigate through a lot of canceled events. That's another thing I think we've also recently updated. So we've received a lot of really helpful community feedback, and we're trying to incorporate that. So you can now sort the events by categories: children's programming, contra dance, Morris dance, English, online concert, other traditions, playing music, square dancing. You can view by day, by week, by month, or all events, and you no longer have to scroll through the canceled events.
I just want to thank you all for doing that. It's been a lifeline. It really has been great.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Seth, for mentioning yours too. Would you be willing to put, is there information that you can share in the chat
I think
information?
he already has.
Oh, so good. I'm sorry. I can't look at everything at once.
Um,
I don't want to talk too much, but I also want to just remind people that there's more than just Zoom dancing. There are concerts and there are workshops in all kinds of ways that we can still connect to each other, not only dancing.
Katie, there have been several questions about liability at events, in particular about liability if folks get sick. Can you speak to any of that?
Not as much as you'd like me to. That's the answer to that question. There are some big unknowns with how insurance companies are going to be responding to the pandemic in the coming year. We know that because we have been told it's going to be really hard to predict how our rates are going to increase for us to pay. So I think that is a really good indication that we don't actually know how all insurers are going to respond. I will say we've heard from our insurance company, the company that covers CDSS and CDSS affiliates, that if there are any public health restrictions in place, locally, regionally, or nationally that you're in violation of, that they will deny any claims related to illness or COVID transmission. That's all that they were able to say at that point, which I think is kind of the base. What's most important is that you really speak to a lawyer in your region, because different states have different thresholds for what personal liability. Oh shoot, I'm not going to say the right thing. I did all the talk to your lawyer thing is absolutely right. And someone who knows the state laws in the state that you're in, because the answer in California may not be the same as the answer in Oklahoma, as the answer in North Carolina. So this is a time when it might actually be worth reaching out. And if you haven't worked with a lawyer before, one place that people have found helpful is reaching out to the YMCA or an organization like that and see who they would recommend talking to. They're nonprofit, they run public programming, they have a lot of the similar concerns that we do. So that's a first step if you want to start trying to find who can provide legal counsel or talk to you about what liability means in your area.
There's a couple of follow-up questions to that. One about waivers, and if folks sign waivers, how does that affect it? Again, I think the answer will be individual depending on your state. But would it be possible for CDSS to compile some of those state regulations in one place for folks to search?
We could look into that. Yeah, we could look into that. It is what I've also heard from our insurer and legal counsel is that it's sometimes judge specific, which is a whole level that we can't get into. But we certainly could look at the difference between states. Waivers, I do know that, so here's my spiel about waivers. If you want to put a waiver in place to protect your organization from having to spend money or being taken to court, it's really important to remember that a waiver doesn't prevent a lawsuit. A waiver may help your case in the event that you are sued, but that won't necessarily prevent you from having to pay for legal counsel or legal representation. And if a judge looks at a case, looks at a suit and decides that it should go to court, it will go to court regardless of the waiver, and there will be fees. So just keep that in mind, that waivers can be really helpful if you're ever brought to court, but they won't prevent you from possibly having to pay to be represented in court. Just an important thing to remember.
All right. This is sort of a different thread, but there was a question about why did CDSS send out cards about Pinewood sessions?
Oh yeah. So right now we are continuing to plan. We are planning for in-person events, mostly because if we don't plan, they won't happen. And if something unfolds that means that it's safe for some or all people to come to camp, we have decided as an organization that we would be willing to run, if it's safe, even a lower enrollment camp, even if it's at a loss to our organization, because we feel that community is important. However, just like last year, if it's not safe, or if our facilities decide it's not safe, or if something changes, it's just going to be like last year. If it's not safe to gather, we're going to cancel camps. It's just too soon to do that. So that's why that happened. And you will continue to see marketing on that front, hopefully marketing that takes into account the current situation and helps to make that a little bit more clear. We don't mean to be duplicitous. I don't know the word. But that's where we are with that.
Speaking of marketing, there's a question about how do you market online events? And a follow-up to that, what are some creative ideas for online events? This would be a good community question.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to open that up to the community. What do you all think? Because some of you are doing it really well. I have to call people up by name. How about this? If Claire Takamori is still on the call, Claire, what has been useful in your online marketing efforts? She might not be on the call anymore.
I'm mostly just far away. I was over there picking calendula flowers off. Hi, everyone. So, gosh, what's helpful in online marketing? If you're not on Facebook, I don't know. I would rely on your email lists from wherever. Otherwise, Facebook is weird. You know, you kind of have to be well connected on Facebook, or someone has to have a big draw, I'm finding, for, you know, you can't just make an event and post it on your little Facebook page and hope that people will see it, because Facebook just doesn't connect people that way. So I'm not exactly sure what's super helpful, and it changes all the time.
Yeah, at CDSS. Yeah, I'm sorry, Claire.
No, go ahead.
I didn't realize. Anyway, I will say we have this problem at CDSS, and one of the things that we do is we put our fantastic board to work helping us. But if you don't have a full board, you could put together a marketing team or ambassadors. So basically, when CDSS promotes an event or something online and we want to amplify the message, we ask our board to share it on their personal pages, not just sharing it, but sharing it with a personal message saying, wow, I'm so excited about this, or hey, check this out, this is cool, or I didn't know, you know, it's that is a way that bumps it up in priority in terms of how it's listed on their friends' pages. So it's not just, so taking the original event, create the original event, have people ready to amplify it, and then adding personal comments or messages during the amplification. All of that helps get it out in a higher prioritized on Facebook.
There's also the paid, you know, boost, which I don't know how much it helps. I actually got pedophiles when I paid boost of family dance. I wasn't happy with that. And then people always say videos. So if you can do a little video clip, I usually do a video clip during the sound check before my contra, and then I put that out the week before my contra. And that always gets more hits than a regular just sharing something. And then they say kittens, so.
Katie, in Atlanta, one of the things that we try to do with publicity, regardless of the medium, is to invite people not just to a dance, but also to focus on people who don't want to dance by themselves for whatever reason, and to let them know that this is a social and a community event. It's a time to chat with people or just listen to some decent music while you do the dishes. And I think that's important, because a lot of us don't want to dance, but a lot of us want to be part of the community, and that is.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump to extend that, if I may. I really want to emphasize that this is a social activity. We just happen to be dancing, but what we're really doing is meeting our needs for social community. And So we end our events with individual check-in. We have a lot of breakout time where people are in small groups because, when you have 50, 40 people in one Zoom, it's really hard to have a meaningful conversation. But you like seed the breakout rooms with little icebreakers, like what's your favorite new hobby you've picked up since, or what's the thing you're most glad about in these times when you're in quarantine, or something like that, to get people started talking in the small breakout rooms of 4, 5, or 6 people. But
Yeah.
I know a large number of groups that are just having social activities, whether it's games or songs, or it's not even necessarily about the dance, but about getting people together in your community.
And this reminds me of something else that Gay was talking about, that sometimes it's not about hosting your own event, but you can coordinate with other people in your community to join an event together. And I believe people have been doing that. Groups from different dance communities around the country have been joining, I believe, the Toronto Contra Dance. Gay, correct me if I'm wrong. And so they can go all together, do the dancing, but then there's some breakout room time or time with just their little group of people that came to the dance together to talk. So that's a way of, really creating social engagement opportunities for your community without having to create the actual online event, which sounds pretty fun to me.
Katie, I think if there's some wrap up to do, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left. So
you're so wonderful. I want to keep hearing from all of you, and I hope we will keep hearing from all of you. So Nikki, there are a few just slides for reminders. We'll go through them super quick about what we have. We do have some COVID specific resources that we've put up there. We are actually working to add a lot more to that, hopefully in the next couple months, and update that. But there's a resources portal, online events calendar, and then, like I said, the gigging artists send love to organizers. I'm sorry, not organizers. I am feeling love for organizers. That's why that came out of my mouth. Freelancers. Great. Okay, next slide. We also have, so the resource portal is something that is a vague term for a gold mine. And we are hopefully in the next year going to be building an even more user-friendly, better platform for that. But don't wait. Go ahead and dive in. There's so many great resources from the community on various topics. We have quarterly e-blasts for organizers. Email cdss.org/shoptalk to sign up for those. Shared Wait our listservs. We have a grants program, and we will be expanding our grant uses in the next year because of pandemic, but I want to just put a quick plug in here to remind everybody that you can use CDSS grant money this year. You can still apply if you're interested. If you want to pay for facilitated conversation for your community on cultural equity or anti-racism work. And we're doing it that way because there are really excellent professionals out there who will do it better than what we could come up with. They deserve the support, and they are probably, if they're in your region, they know more about your region and your community. So please keep that in mind for the grants. Our next web chat will be in January. I know that's a few months break, but there's a lot coming out of the community right now. Some really interesting series, skill building series, concert series, end of year stuff. We didn't want to create competition for that, and we wanted to everybody, anyway, that's really, so January, look for us again in January. And if you ever want to have an idea for a CDSS news article, if you want to write one, if you want to collaborate for one, please keep us in mind, because that's another great way to stay connected and keep conversations going. Okay, next slide. So we will be sending you a follow-up survey tomorrow, and we read those, and they make a difference, and they really help guide us in what our next steps are on web chats. But also, we're exploring lots of possibilities for next year for online programming. So this is a great time to give us feedback on what is important, what do you need, and what would be helpful. So please, please do respond to the survey. We love data. We really do. Great. And I think that's it. Is there another slide? Yep, that's it. Thank you everybody so much. This is, it's so incredible to feel like we're together right now, even though we're not. So thank you very much, and keep the ideas coming to CDSS.